Hi, my name is Amy Beeson Medford, and I'm a researcher at the Harvard Project on American Indian Economic Development at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. We are in collaboration with the Native Nations Center at University of Oklahoma and are engaged in a colloquium of bringing together experts to discuss the McGirt versus Oklahoma decision from the U.S. Supreme Court. And today we have Monte Mills with us to discuss natural resources. Monte, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Amy. I'm Monte Mills. I'm a professor and director of the Marjorie Hunter Brown Indian Law Clinic here at the Alexander Blewett III School of Law at the University of Montana in beautiful Missoula, Montana. It's great to be here.
Great. And Monty, one of your policy briefs that you've provided to the toolbox is a great in-depth paper on natural resources. And I was hoping you'd be able to talk a little bit about the setup of the paper and sort of the foundation that the introduction and the beginning pieces of the paper, while thick, are super important for setting up the concepts that come later on in the paper.
Yeah, sure, Amy. I think like many things in our present day, you can't really understand the existing state of affairs, and particularly after the McGirt decision, without understanding a little bit of the context and history. And that's particularly true, maybe more true than any other field of the law in federal Indian law. And outside the context of what is now Oklahoma and the five tribes, issues of natural resource management and tribal authority over lands and reserved treaty rights to hunt and fish or reserved water rights have been really complicated issues that have developed over court decisions made over the course of centuries. And so some of that is really important context and basis for thinking about what is now happening on the grounds in eastern Oklahoma post McGirt. And some of it is quite different given Oklahoma's unique history and the history of removal and the history of the five tribes and their continuing exercise of sovereignty on the ground. So I think bringing those two together and really providing some of that broader context hopefully will be helpful as both tribal leaders and others in the area think about what a post-McGirt world might look like in the context of natural resources and environmental regulation.
Yeah, as I was reading it, I really enjoyed um, the setup because you were sort of building what I needed to know as you got into the opportunities and the risks that are out there. And along those lines, would you like to expand on some of those opportunities that are sort of achievable and maybe available to Indian country?
Yeah, sure. I think thank you for saying that. I really hope that, consistent with the spirit of this whole project, that this paper and all the others will be useful for folks really struggling with these challenges on the ground. I think there's already a really strong record of the five tribes and working with state and other partners in the region on a variety of issues to address their exercises of shared sovereignty and concerns of their citizens and concerns of their communities, both tribal and non-tribal communities. And I think given the long history and complexity of the legal state of affairs when it comes to natural resources and environmental regulation, there are some significant opportunities that are posed by McGirt and the Supreme Court's confirmation of those historical treaty reserved reservations. And really, I think the opportunities at the broadest level are building on those continued successes of sovereign shared sovereignty and the exercise of authority to protect citizens across the region. Because when it comes to natural resources and protection of the environment, there really aren't the same boundaries that we've seen elsewhere. And while McGirt and the Supreme Court confirmed the treaty reserved reservation boundaries, that doesn't really apply to water resources or air quality or wildlife or the potential threats posed by environmental harm. And so the law thinks of things in sort of those clear boundaries, but that doesn't really necessarily mean a practical solution. And that's really where the opportunities are, I think, moving forward, is to think about how to solve those problems in an innovative way. And frankly, in a lot of the same ways that the tribes and their partners have been doing in other areas prior to McGirt.
Mm. I really enjoyed hearing the various tribe and state collaborations in addressing issues. I really liked the sort of we're in this together, sort of, how do we protect resources together? It seemed to be a really um, fruitful endeavor.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think the situation in Oklahoma and the five tribes is certainly unique,
Mm,
um, but the challenges posed by some of these issues aren't unique across Indian country elsewhere. And there
mm,
have been examples of other tribes working with partners to solve some of these issues. And certainly there have been examples of other tribes insisting or, fighting more in conflict with folks who refuse to recognize their authority or, challenge tribal authority to engage in a particular activity. And there's a range of options and choices to make, and each comes with opportunity and risk. And unfortunately, I think, given the development of particularly Supreme Court precedent around tribal jurisdiction and tribal authority, the trend has been to limit tribal powers, which presents some real tough choices for tribal leaders to make, particularly when it comes to thinking about litigation and sort of the challenge of fighting over what could end up being broader authority or maybe unfortunate decisions that narrow that authority. And I guess I would say, particularly in the context of natural resources and environmental regulation, a lot of those cases turn on really fact-specific determinations of who's involved and what the activity is, and that lends to the uncertainty. So I think in other areas, tribes have made choices about collaborative approaches that, may not sort of be the 100% sovereign authority that the tribe may prefer, but certainly results in an outcome that is protective of tribal interests and represents a different assertion of sovereignty in terms of a government to government relationship. And so I think that some of those examples may be helpful to these challenges going forward in Oklahoma, and recognizing, however, that there are some distinctions about the history and legal issues in Oklahoma that put the five tribes there in a little bit different situation.
yeah. The risks that you outline, I thought were poignant and stuff that I hope that Indian country will dive into and be aware of. But what I liked is that you include specific examples of what tribal governments are doing today, and showing, specifically how it is that they are engaging in addressing issues. Is there one that sort of stands out to you that you would like to share?
Yeah, well, and unfortunately, given the space constraints in the project, I had to just pick and choose a few that I thought were representative and hopefully helpful. But I think particularly in the area of environmental regulation and questions of air quality, the work that has been done on an intergovernmental basis by and between the Southern Ute Indian Tribe in Colorado and the state of Colorado, in conjunction with the Environmental Protection Agency, in developing a intergovernmental environmental commission that works together to help resolve air quality licensing and regulation on the reservation, is hopefully instructive and helpful, particularly because the land status issues there on that reservation in southwestern Colorado are somewhat analogous to what the situation is on the ground in eastern Oklahoma. Not precisely, of course, the histories are quite different, and that's true of all 574 federally recognized tribes, right? But there are some hopefully helpful comparisons that can be drawn, and that was really the my goal in putting together these examples, was just hopefully to provide some menu of options and some ideas that folks maybe can pick and choose from and see what might work or what might not. There is no obviously perfect solution. If there was, probably it would have already happened by now, but hopefully these are helpful to prompt some thinking about what might be possible moving forward.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed this paper, and I hope the rest of Indian country does as well. I thank you, Monty. And if folks are interested in learning more, please check out the McGirt Toolbox, the link below.
Great. Thanks, Amy.